So, picture this. You've been putting money into your 401k for over a decade. The balance keeps going up. You're not spending recklessly. Every year, you try to put in a little more. You're doing everything you were told to do. And yet, every retirement article you click, every calculator you run, leaves you with that same hollow feeling. And you think, the balance is going up. I've been consistent. I've been patient. So why does every benchmark I find make me feel like I'm still a million miles behind? Here's the problem. It's not your balance. It's the scoreboard you've been reading. The median household 10 years out from retirement has $185,000 saved, and the number most people say you need to retire comfortably is $1.26 million. That's a $1,075,000 gap. And most people use that gap to quietly decide they're behind without ever checking the actual distribution. Because here's what nobody tells you. The bar to be ahead of roughly 90% of American households is lower than that gap makes it look. And there are 6 signs, with real numbers behind them, that tell you whether you've already cleared it. Most people recognize the first 2 immediately. Signs 3 and 5 are the ones almost nobody checks. And honestly, they're more predictive of your actual retirement outcome than your balance alone. My name is Frank, and I've spent more time on this question than I'd like to admit. Not what advisors say in general, but what the actual distribution data shows for people at this exact stage. Sign 1. Your balance beats your age bracket's median, not its average. This is where most people are reading the wrong scoreboard. The average retirement savings for households between 55 and 64 is $537,560. That's the number that circulates in articles and in the calculators you've probably punched your numbers into. Most people see it and feel behind. And that feeling makes sense. If that's the real middle, a lot of people are behind it. But it's not the real middle. The median for that same age group, the actual household in the center of the distribution, is $185,000. Among households that have a retirement account at all, the average gets dragged up hard by a small number of households with very large balances. The median is where most real people actually live. Most retirement guides never explain the difference between median and average. They just cite the number that makes everyone feel behind. If your combined retirement balance is above $185,000 and you're in your 50s, you are past the median household heading into retirement. That's not a consolation prize. That's a measurable position in the real distribution. And according to 2022 Survey of Consumer Finance's data, analyzed by the Congressional Research Service, only 9.2% of households in the 55 to 64 bracket have retirement assets above $1 million. That's the real top 10%, the top decile. The scoreboard most people have been reading was always wrong. You may have been winning and not known it. Sign 2. You save 15% or more of your income, including your employer match. The average total savings rate in 2024, employee contributions plus employer contributions combined, was 12.0%. According to Vanguard's How America Saves 2025 report, that was a record high. The best savings year ever measured in the data, and 15% is above it. If your combined rate, what you put in, plus whatever your employer adds, clears 15%, you are saving at a higher rate than the average participant in the single best savings year on record. Not ahead of a weak baseline, ahead of the peak. That's worth knowing. Sign 3. You carry no credit card balance month to month. This one surprises people. Retirement conversations almost never start here, but they probably should. Half of all workers carry credit card debt. According to the EBRI 2026 Retirement Confidence Survey, nearly 1 in 3 have more than $25,000 in non-mortgage debt, and roughly 3 in 5 workers say their debt is actively limiting their ability to save for retirement. 3 in 5, not a few people, the majority. And debt at that level isn't just a cash flow problem. It's compounding in the wrong direction. Interest you're paying is retirement money you're not keeping. If you pay your card off every month, no interest, no carried balance, you are not in the majority. You're in a group that most working Americans at most income levels have not managed to stay in. The compounding difference that makes over 10 to 15 years is not small. It's not on most retirement checklists. That's not on you. It's just not where the conversation usually starts. Most people hear the first 3 signs, feel reasonably good, and stop watching. What they miss are signs 4 and 5. And those are the ones that actually determine whether you retire when you plan to or 3 years later. Sign 4. You've actually run your withdrawal numbers. Here's the part that almost nobody talks about. Only 44% of workers have thought through how much they'll actually withdraw from savings in retirement. Only 41% have tried to calculate what healthcare in retirement might cost. These are 2025 numbers from the EBRII Retirement Confidence Survey. Among people who are actively engaged with retirement planning, less than half. If you've sat down, even roughly, and thought about what your drawdown looks like, what you'll actually live on when paychecks stop, what your first 5 years of retirement income looks like, you are in a group that most people who are closer to retirement than you never enter. The person who retires with $900,000 in a plan is often in a better position than the person who retires with $1.1 million and no idea where to start. The money is part of the answer. The plan is the rest of it. Remember that $1,075,000 gap from the beginning between the median saver and the number everyone says you need? This sign is exactly what determines which side of it you end up on. Not just your balance, your plan. Sign 5. You hold both pre-tax and Roth money. This is the part I never expected, and it's the one that changes everything. Vanguard's How America Saves 2025 report tracked the percentage of employees who have access to a Roth 401k option and actually use it. That number is 18%. Let that land for a second. Fewer than 1 in 5 people with a Roth option on their 401k form elect to use it. 18%. And that's the all-time high. The best year ever recorded for Roth participation. If you hold both a traditional 401k and a Roth account in any combination, you are doing something that more than 80% of workers with the option don't do. You have tax flexibility that the other 82% will not have when withdrawals begin. This isn't a minor optimization. In retirement, the difference between pulling from a fully taxable account and having a choice between taxable and tax-free money is the difference between owing the IR that has a significant cut of every dollar and having a lever you can actually pull. Nobody put this on most retirement checklists. That's not a personal failure. That's just not where the guides start. Sign 6. You have 10 times your annual income saved. Or you're on the path there. Only 9% of Americans have 10 times their income saved for retirement. That's from Northwestern Mutual's 2025 Planning and Progress Study. 9%. If you're not there yet, but you're in your mid-50s, saving at 15%, and holding a growing Roth position, you don't need to be there yet. You need to be pointed at it. The person who builds methodically toward that number over the next decade clears it. The person who doesn't know the target doesn't. Knowing it exists and being aimed at it puts you well ahead of most. Now, I want to make sure one thing is clear, because this is what the benchmark conversation almost always gets wrong. The average retirement balance at 55 to 64 is $537,560. But averages in wealth data are almost always misleading. A small number of households with very large balances pull the number up dramatically. The median is $185,000. The distribution is so bottom-heavy that the jump from the 50th percentile to the 90th is enormous. And you don't need $537,000 to be at the middle. you need $185,000. Only 9.2% of households in that age bracket have retirement assets above $1 million, which means roughly $1 million in retirement accounts at 55 to 64 puts you in the top 10% of actual American households. Half the people watching this have been measuring themselves against a number that doesn't represent real households. They've been losing on a scoreboard that was always wrong. And I want to address the one objection I hear every time. If I'm ahead of 90% of people, why do I still feel behind? Because you've been benchmarked against the magic number and the inflated average at the same time. And the people you see online talking about retirement, the ones who feel like the baseline, are not the average household. They're in the top few percent. That's who shows up in a feed. Ahead of 90% doesn't mean done. It means your problem now is sequencing and taxes, not accumulation. And that is a fundamentally different challenge, a more manageable one. I want to be concrete about this, not theory, actual numbers for a real household. The typical household in this bracket saves at about 12% of income, the national average. On a $110,000 household income, that's $13,200 a year going in, starting from $400,000 at 52, running 13 years to 65. Assuming a 7% average annual return, which is a standard long-run assumption and shown on screen as an estimate, that path ends at roughly $1,229,000, just under the $1.26 million comfort line. And with 100% pre-tax money, every withdrawal is fully taxable. The after-tax shortfall is larger than it looks on paper. Now push the savings rate to 15%. Same household, same income, same return assumption. The extra 3%, $3,300 a year, goes into the Roth option. At 65, that path reaches roughly $1,296,000, a $67,000 difference. I'm not your advisor, I don't know your full picture. But the math works the same way regardless of whose numbers you run. 3% of your paycheck. That is the entire distance between falling short of the comfort line and crossing it. $67,000 you either have or you don't, based on one decision made this year. Now, I want to talk directly to 3 different people watching this. If you're in your late 30s or early 40s and you feel that low-grade unease, that quiet suspicion that the compounding window is already starting to close, hear this. The distribution data says you have more time than you think. The gap between the median and the top decile is not built in 1 year. It's built in the boring decade you're in right now. Start the 15% rate today. Open the Roth today. The person who makes those 2 moves in their early 40s and holds them is not comparable to the person who waits. The math makes sure of it. If you're in your late 40s or early 50s and you feel that tightening, that specific pressure where retirement isn't abstract anymore, but it still feels just far enough away to keep deferring, you are in the most consequential window in the entire timeline. Not the window with the most money in it, the window where decisions made this year echo the loudest. Run the 3 checks that matter most right now, your combined savings rate, whether you're using your Roth option, and whether you have any kind of drawdown plan written down. Those 3 things this month. And if you're past 56 and the timeline feels compressed, if the math keeps looking tighter every time you run it, I want to say this honestly. A meaningful portion of the households ahead of you in the percentile tables built that lead in the final stretch, not the whole career. And if you or your spouse have any defined benefit income coming, government, union, military, legacy corporate, a $30,000 a year pension is roughly equivalent to $750,000 in savings at a 4% withdrawal rate. That's Frank's math, not a published figure, but run it for your situation. It changes the scoreboard faster than most people expect. Now you have the real scoreboard, not the average, not the magic number, the actual distribution data for your age bracket. And if you've been hitting these 6 signs, you're further ahead than most people will ever realize. If this was useful, subscribe. The next video covers what the top 10% do differently in the 5 years before retirement, and it picks up exactly where this one left off.